Right, so good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome Chris here from GTennis, who's going to give you an insight on his on coaching, and also welcome Andy Candler, head of the clubs and venues. So, and over to you then, Andy.
Yeah. Thanks, Janice. So, yeah, if we go straight into welcoming Chris. So, thanks for coming today, Chris. Chris sort of first came to my knowledge in the tabloid newspaper. I think it was the Guardian, Chris. I think it was.
Yeah, that was right.
Other good newspapers are available, I should say. Yeah, during Wimbledon week, I read an article about the good things that Chris has been doing. I'll allow him to speak about it. But first of all, Chris, just a bit about yourself and how you got into tennis, if that's okay.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for inviting me to speak. I fell into tennis probably quite randomly. I'm from Bradford. You can probably tell I'm not from the southeast. And there was a tennis club, fortunately, across the road. The only indoor centre was, 500 yards away from our house. So played a bit as a kid. Was probably reasonably okay as a sort of early teenager, but then I think just the cost of lessons, and probably lost a little bit of interest as well, maybe. But I ended up stopping. Ended up on a bit of a gap year when I was 18. I worked at the tennis club behind the bar, did a bit of reception work, and then sort of randomly fell into coaching. Started playing again, and yeah, fast forward 20-something years, I'm down here.
How did you get down here? Was it the money situation that sort of attracts you down to the south at all?
No, I had a lot of friends down here, and I sort of found myself coming down like every other weekend to meet friends. And then I worked with I don't know if any of you know Matt Borthwick, who works at Park Langley.
I don't personally know, but Park Langley we know very well.
Okay, so I worked with Matt at David Lloyd in Leeds, and he just said, "Oh, my sister works down in sort of more around the Henley Marlow area, and you should speak to her." And it all happened very quickly, and within a couple of weeks, I'd come down, and I started working for Annabel Croft at the National Tennis Centre, which is where I met my wife Catherine, and we started our program together about 10 years ago.
Fine. And did you set up? Was it GTennis that came first of all before Young Champs? Was it GTennis as the company first?
That's right. Yeah, it was GTennis. We just started. We got the opportunity to work in a park. Well, Catherine was already there to work in a park in Stockwell, and one thing led to another, and sort of snowball effect. And yeah, but with the charity, it's very, very new. Charity's not even. It's just a year old actually. Early this month, it took quite a long time to become official, and yeah, that's sort of next stage of the journey.
Yeah. So it was you and Catherine that started the charity up as such.
Yeah, just the work we've been doing, and had sort of created a really nice culture, and thought a lot of clients sort of really like what we do, and offered their help, and we've got some wonderful trustees, and yes, it's a bit of a team effort really. It's a lot more work than I anticipated, but I do really, really enjoy it.
Yeah. And so just a bit about behind the idea of it. What spurred you on to have this idea in the first place?
I think I'd sort of go back a little bit. So we started. I think we're coming up to about probably our 10-year anniversary. But I think 2018 we started working with another local charity that supports single parents, and we did a session. I don't know if any of you seen Freddie Flintoff's Field of Dreams, but it was a little bit like that. Yeah, very sort of similar. A lot of kids from the local estate, and to fast forward. 5-6 years. I've got one boy who's now 16. He's starting his level 1, next week. Luke House at Virtus really kindly offered some help towards paying for that, and Surrey have too. And then we've also got Sabine, who's the girl I sort of talked about in the Guardian article, who's now in the Surrey County squad. So I think we all sort of suspect and think the talent probably is out there, but I think what we've managed to do is facilitate that pathway. We found Sabine and some other kids as well. A lot of the kids, it was a bit of a social. They liked to give me a hard time, but there was some who clearly wanted to take it a bit more seriously. So I think the whole sort of the way we started doing what we do would be to say to those kids, look, there's a space on Monday night, 4:00, go and do another session. And I knew that parents would never be able to afford it, or that, they said they were single parents in this case. So we just let them come for free. And my attitude is, well, there's a space there. Why not let somebody play? And then I think Sabine had been doing lessons for a couple of years, and the county the county fun day, which was the county talent ID day, came about, and I took Sabine with another little girl who came through another program, which I'll tell you a little bit about as well. And they both got picked, and I was like, wow, neither of them had a private lesson, but we've got a few fundamentals we really sort of like to work on in our program, and hopefully give them a good base. And Sabine now has represented Surrey. She's doing amazingly well, incredibly athletic. Who knows? She could be the next Emma, but I think it's creating that pathway. We've got her to a certain point, and even now you'd think she's at county level, but to get to that next regional level is, as probably a lot of you all know, is incredibly difficult and incredibly expensive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, so from a funding point of view, is it the idea to try and get the clubs to try and support this, or the coaches, a bit of both, or to try and get some kind of sponsorship to go?
Yeah, I think all of the above, and I think what we do. We're in quite a unique situation. We're at a park in central London, or sort of southwest London. We're just situated between sort of Stockwell Tube and, I don't know if you've been to Battersea Power Station, but we're kind of in that thing. If you cross the road from Battersea, there's a huge estate, and we're at the other side of it. But we've done it through. So initially, I think when lockdown came, the first lockdown came in COVID, the kids came back, and we really noticed the difference between the cheer kids and a lot of the sort of more middle class families. And it sort of sounds really obvious now, but you look back and think a lot of those kids were cooped up in small flats, no gardens to play in, and it really affected. I think we sort of, really, Catherine and I both sort of said, "Look, this is, you kind of know it, but I think when it's in your face a bit more, it really affected us." And I think from then we thought, when the next lockdown hit, we thought, look, we've got the time on our hands now to try and do something really positive. So we started a crowdfund to try and offer. The initial idea was to try and offer 100 children the Youth Start course. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. It's where you do 6 hours coaching, and the kids get a free racket, balls, and t-shirt. So we thought if we can raise £3,500, we can offer that to 100 kids in the holidays. And within 6 to 8 weeks, we'd raised nearly 5.5, and we were like, wow, okay, this is interesting. People have obviously been really generous. So I'll try and cut a long story short, but we set that up. We went into the local schools. We said, look, have you got any kids who might be up for doing this? And we sort of said, look, pupil premium kids, which is sort of the free school meals, but that's the gauge of kids from the sort of the demographic we were looking to attract. And we got about 65 in the first round. And the beauty of it was we had a couple of £1,000 left in the pot. We could then offer a really affordable follow-on. And I remember doing the Youth Start training and with sort of Leon Smith and all the guys at the NTC, and they'd said the initial take-up or thing was about 10%, and we got 50% of the kids to sign up. And it's, we took away the cost. We charged them £2 a session, so it was £24 for 12 weeks. And we used some of the money from the pot to subsidise it. We didn't make any money on that. We just covered costs to break even, to pay the coaches and cover the court fees. But I think it showed, we'd done open days in the past to have really good uptake from the local community. But when it came to actually getting kids signed up, and we weren't expensive, I think it was £5, £6 a session, which in hindsight, I can talk a little bit more about this later, I think was too cheap. We were trying to sort of pitch in the middle, hoping we'd get everybody. But the reality was a lot of the sort of more middle class affluent families were just getting a really good deal. But yeah, it was great. This was sort of the back end of 2021, and we ended up in a situation where not only did we had our charity sessions, which I really liked, but I always felt a bit uncomfortable. It was like charity in the other program, and we really wanted all the kids to integrate, and that's exactly what's happened.
Yeah, no, good, great. As I said, it's interesting, but those pathways for sort of football and rugby and those team sports seem to be there, but not necessarily for tennis. I suppose that there, as you say, there is a big cost element, isn't it, from a coaching perspective? So that funding isn't always available for an individual. Did you find it's more difficult to try and win the charities over from an individual point of view rather than like a team sport at all, and supporting a team?
Yeah, I think say the charity element really. So we did a crowdfund. So initially we were asking friends, family, clients to donate. There was a few anonymous ones that I to this day don't quite know who they were, but I'm guessing people who like the sound of what we've been doing. But I think that is the comparison, and we talk about tennis opened up and how you do that. And I think that is the comparison I always like to draw. If you've got a talented child at football, or so I hate to use the word talented, but a child that's obviously good at football, whatever your financial situation, there is a pathway through the clubs, through the academies and clubs to pay for that. Now, I appreciate that we don't all have the sort of financial backing of a Premier League football team, but, you look at Wimbledon, they have the WJTI, you've got the Queen's Club Foundation. And I think what I hope to do by speaking to more people and the campaign that we're starting, which I'll talk a little bit about later, is every club can do their little bit. And I'm sure, and through doing this, I've met loads of clubs that are doing some really, really amazing work. But I think the perception needs to be that everybody or more people are doing this, rather than, Chris is doing that in his park. He's kind of covering that base. We don't really need to do it. So yeah, that's kind of where we're going. But we are now on a pathway of trying to attract funding. We got charitable status, and I was like, right, here we go. And then every fund we applied for said, oh, we need to see your first year's account. So we're like, okay, so we're now waiting till we've done that, and we can start to hopefully apply for funding. But the money's definitely out there, and people are bending over backwards to want to help, which is, I think, amazing.
So practically, are we sort of asking our clubs in Kent to try and get involved in what you do, or is there a suggestion from you that clubs can go out and do this themselves? And also, practically, how would they start to look at this and approach it? I mean, obviously, they're looking at children that potentially do need that assistance or help. As you said, you might find a talented child that's doing 1 day a week coaching at the moment that could benefit from that extra coaching course each week. So it's more the practical element of how the clubs on this call could start that themselves, really.
Yeah, so we're launching a campaign. The initial thing, it was mentioned in the Guardian article you talked about, was called Project 10K, and the sort of premise was that if we could get 100 venues up and down the country to offer 2 hours a week, or say they would open up a couple of hours a week in their program at a really affordable rate, and I sort of think £2 and I think it's good to put a value on it, because I think it's maybe another conversation. But I think when you offer things free, it takes away the value and can undermine it a little bit. But the idea being, if we get 100 coaches, 100 venues to do 2 hours a week, that would result in 10,000 hours. Now, a digital marketing agency, one of my clients said, look, we'd love to get involved and help you take this and turn it into something huge. And the first thing they said was, we love the idea, but Project 10K sounds a little bit too much like running. So we're like, okay, so we're having a little bit of a rebrand at the minute, and it's going to launch officially early next year. But if you are interested in doing it, that's the simplicity of it. And it might be like you say, that you've got a child in your program that is doing an hour, and that they would, and it's sort of, it would be amazing, if Sabine becomes the next Emma Raducanu, but it's not about that. It's creating that chance for a child to get to that next level, and maybe they might one day become a coach, and keeping them in the sport. So, they can carry on playing. But that would be the initial commitment, if anybody wants to. But the hope I have is that if I can get 100, and I've got about 20 odd signed up already, year on year, 100 becomes 200, 300, and I would love it to become part of LTA registration process a long way down the line. But that is the premise of it. And it's, I always sort of say, if a coach goes into a school and sees that child, I know coaches that have said the most important thing about identifying talent or a potential future star is the state of the parents' bank balance. And that is the reality. There's kids in Sabine's squad who are having probably £800 a month spent on tennis. I've spoken to people at, Kent and Surrey, and that's not unusual. You talk about a couple of private lessons, a couple of groups, tournament entry. I've just entered Sabine in a tournament this weekend, £27 for a tournament. It racks up very, very quickly. But I would hope if, sort of clubs can do their bit and create some of these opportunities, then, who knows?
Yeah. No, I know Kent Tennis, we're sort of promoting. I mean, pupil premium wasn't certainly on my radar and wasn't in my vocab probably 2 months ago. Sort of is now. Could you give the people on the meeting just an idea of what pupil premium is, and going into schools and potentially, I would say, trying to release the funding that the schools potentially get that can try and match what clubs and coaches are trying to offer a bit as well, Chris?
Yeah, I think my understanding of pupil premium is there's a subsidy from the government to help kids and families that wouldn't normally be able to afford some of the other things like breakfast clubs and after school clubs like that. But it's a way of identifying the right sort of target audience. And I think there's one question I get asked a lot: how do you find the kids? Where do you find them? How do you stop more affluent families just getting a good deal? And occasionally that happens. The first 65 kids we had in that summer course, one child did turn up in a brand new Range Rover, and you're like, okay, that's how's that happened? But we didn't have we weren't funny about it. We let the kid do the course. It wasn't their fault. They'd been invited, and fast forward 3 years, the girl's still playing, pays the full amount, really, really good player. But we just had that conversation. But in terms of the schools, it's a difficult one. Schools, I work at a couple of inner city state schools around Stockwell. They don't have any money. But there are charities out there. I don't know if you're familiar with Give It Your Max. They operate around Wimbledon. They fund coaches to go into schools. And I sort of find that, I've delivered the LTA teachers training, and, there is money available straight away there for either equipment or for coaching. So, there's opportunities, but I think the tragedy for me is if you go into that school, and I've spoken to so many teachers, when I do the course, and say, what is your experience with, when you have a kid that's interested in the next step, and they sort of roll their eyes and say, we've tried, we reach out, but even when they do get back in touch, it's incredibly expensive. And I think that's what I'm hoping this campaign starts. It's that access point. Even if it's 1 hour in your program, I'd love to, because it makes it into 100. But that access point is there. And then let's say like a Sabine, when she got into county squad, I was like, right, okay, she needs to up what she's doing. I teach Sabine for free. It's my pro bono work, and I love it. And I think obviously I'm on my doing what I'm doing. I think it's important to know that I put a few free hours in as well. But that's the difficult part, and you need a player with 2 or 3 private lessons. But as I say, we've got businesses that support this company here, Accuracy. They've donated to our summer program. I think it's easier when you've got a good player to help find that sponsorship. But I do, I think one of the problems is you ask a lot of coaches who have produced players, they're working for free, and it's not a sustainable business model. And, I think if we're all honest about it, there isn't a pathway, there isn't a recognised pathway for a child like Sabina Weber to get it to the highest point, highest echelons of the sport without a sort of second salary to pay for coaching.
Yeah, that's what we found with a lot of our inclusive programs at the moment. It's giving the money out from Kent Tennis has been fantastic. The initiatives that we've started is brilliant, but it's making them sustainable as well, isn't it? And that's the tipping point. We don't want the coaches to do something for nothing. They have to earn a living at the end of the day. But trying to make things sustainable, for coaches to earn a living, for the venue to see a benefit as well is always very difficult. I know you run out of, is it about 3 park sites in London? So how do you, because we have got some people on the call that run park sites. So how do you actually physically run those yourself? Do you have open days or promotions yourself at all?
But nothing out of the ordinary. We run probably, I don't really use the word regular, but it's just a tennis program in a park. But I think we have created unintentionally this sort of narrative and culture around wanting to do something different in tennis. And I think obviously finding kids, it's now become a lot easier, having identified talent, local talent, and there's other kids who may never be world beaters at tennis, but they come and they do it, and their parents are just so incredibly grateful for this opportunity that's been created. But I think that's the big challenge, and I think we all know. I messaged Luke, a good friend of Luke House, and said, Luke, if you get any good coaches that come through on your level 3s, will you let me know? And he just sort of laughed at me and was like, yeah, I'll be taking them first. We're all looking for good coaches, but I think that's it, and I think this is part of what the bigger picture. This boy I mentioned earlier, the one who's starting his level 1 next week, he had a knife pulled on him coming to coaching on a Sunday morning. And, I want to create opportunities and job opportunities for some of these kids. I think a lot of the play kids that we teach that could potentially become coaches, coaching's not really a profession they see as something they want to do. They're off to university, graduate training schemes, whereas we've got kids and teens now that I'm trying to, upskill, give them the odd private lesson or 1 to 2 lessons so they could pass a level 2 and actually become members of a workforce and get out there. And what an amazing story if they could be in the schools in a few years' time, finding the next generation of kids to come through the program. But I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does.
We've got no toilets. We don't have any facilities. It's not easy.
No, it's been tough. It's been tough. Yeah, so I mean, ideally, so what we're asking, clubs and venues to do here is look at, look at their local schools. Maybe get their coaches to approach them. Look at the pupil premium list that there might be out there, and see if there's any way that you can start, a coaching group session for the pupil premiums, either at the school or at their clubs, sort of off-peak times, and try and find those golden nuggets of children that wanna and can and have got the ability to go a lot further.
I always sort of say it's joining the dots, and I think tennis, going back to opening tennis up, I think there are some really good initiatives out there. I don't know if you're familiar with the Serves program. It's a really good thing where you go into a community group, finding assets that are already there working, embedded in the community. But it's again, linking with somebody like that and say, look, if you do have there's a good child there, that coach knowing that there is a route out. And I think a lot of coaches get quite disenfranchised because I think we all want to find better players. We all want more British interest at Wimbledon, at the Grand Slams. And I think it's just joining those dots. And I would say, I won't mention the club, but there's a club up the road from where I live, and they offered to do their annual fundraiser for our charity, which is incredible. They gave us, raised nearly over £1,000. I talked a little bit about the project, talked a little about Sabine. Everybody gasped that we had a kid, a girl from the local estate in the county squad. And then I sort of realised as I was talking that actually this club is probably the closest club to where we work, to our park. And I said, look, actually thinking about it, this would be great. And straight away it was like, well, we've had members apply before, but junior members don't have any booking rights. So it's really difficult for juniors to play. We're really only interested in adults playing. And you're like, okay. So I think it will take some time, but I would look, if you're interested in what we're doing, and obviously there is absolutely no issue. If not, you might have a really busy club and love how things are. But if you are interested in this, look at your own club. Are there, for a girl like Sabine, if she did come knocking on the door, could you, if you wanted to help somebody and give us some extra court time. Yeah. Sabine plays at a club with her little friend. She's got a little friend in the county squad, and they're both great. But her parents are probably in that sort of just about managing category. They don't have a huge amount of disposable income, so the dad has helped out. But they've joined a club really near Wimbledon, and the resistance they've had. The dad wanted to set up a coaching session for them. He's now doing his level 2 to try and help. And the coach was like, "Oh, I'm really not comfortable. This is going to affect my business." It's like, well, would you be interested in doing anything? Well, no, I won't work, won't do a session for less than £60 an hour. And okay. But they've come around eventually. But this is awful. But, Sabine's auntie was watching the session, and an elderly member came up and asked, she's from Ethiopia, asked her if she was the cleaner.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, and you just...
Perception,
and you hope these are exceptions, but I'm sure that's a really, really extreme example. But I had another friend, I think I wrote this in the article, again, I won't mention the club, but he played at a really prestigious club in London. And again, he's black, he's from Zimbabwe, a really good friend of mine. And again, he was asked if he was the cleaner. And I think we need to have a look at clubs and how welcoming they are. And I'm sure this doesn't apply to anybody on this call, but there are some, I worry about that. I worry about that environment, and we've got a really inclusive, safe space, and anybody's welcome. But unfortunately, but this is my goal. I want to try and shake things up a little bit, and hopefully in years to come, things might look very different, because we have got an elitist stereotype, a tag, and I think it's a genuine one. I think you can't disagree with it when you look at how the chances of kids getting to that high level of tennis and who can afford it.
I definitely. So I'd like to open it up to the floor now for any questions, Chris, if that's okay. So would anybody like to come in with any questions for Chris?
And Andy, I would Hi, Chris. Really, really interesting presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Am I being heard? Yes, I am. I think kind of the Sabina thing is a great role model, but actually there's only one Sabina out of thousands of people. And really, for me, the key message is to give anyone of any financial background the ability to come into tennis and get to the best that they can be, really. And as you say, and that might just be a modest standard, it might be up to club standard, it might be into coach, and one in a 5,000-10,000 might become a Sabina. So it's kind of how we, that isn't a question, it's more of a statement. It's about how we frame this out there, because the Sabinas and the Emiraticanos are going to one in 5,000-10,000, aren't they?
I couldn't agree more, and we never set out to find a Sabine. It was all about, I think the one thing Catherine and I both felt quite uncomfortable with, before all this started, was our program did not reflect our local community. And, you'd see the kids walking past, you'd often see them asking, can I get involved? Can I have a tennis ball? And we give them the tennis ball. But that was the thing. And as I say, we've got, I haven't mentioned this yet, but I think about, and it's not an exact figure that we aim for, but about 25% of our program is £2 or less, and most of the kids are not Sabine. But fortunately, I think for non-tennis coaches and sort of people, this Sabine story, that she's obviously the sort of poster girl, and it really helps me tell this story about how we've taken this kid. And who knows, right? I don't think, it's interesting you say that, and I know what I always sort of wrestle with is she one in a million, or are there more Sabines out there? And we just don't know. We just do not know until we start to create these trends. But if you come down to our if you're ever sort of in London, please pop in. But we've got a great program, and the challenge that I find really frustrating, we've got more potential Sabines, but we don't have I just don't have the time or capacity to put my energy into them. And we need to find more coaches. I need more bodies. We've only got 2 courts, and the council only really let us have one of them at any one time. So we need more venues, and there's so many challenges. But I couldn't agree more, Rob. I think that's really, really important. A really important point.
And are you finding that more boys are joining your program, Chris, than girls, or is it a 50-50 split until a certain age, and then you see the drop off like most sports and clubs do?
I've not had a look. I think because obviously we've got Catherine, who's brilliant female coach, female role model. We have Sabine. It's been really interesting. We have a coach, Sebastian, who's from Angola, a black coach. So the visibility, we're in the heart of a park next to a playground, and having him has been hugely. But without realizing, he came to our first open day and said, "Look, I just love tennis. I'll help where I can." And 10 years later, he's still here and this amazing role model. But to the female thing, I think we're fairly split. But I think would it be different if we didn't have Catherine? Possibly. I think having a female coach, but I think again having Sabine as this role model, I think is definitely
attracting more girls to it as well.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anybody else would like to ask Chris a question?
Hi, Chris. It's Gavid from Infinity Tennis.
Gavid, I was going to mention you, but I didn't want to embarrass you if you're on the call. How are you doing?
I'm good. You? I just wanted to say that I attended one of these similar call with Chris at the tail end of 2023, I think it was. And off the back of that, we've launched a load of initiatives around school engagement and providing opportunities for children from low income or disadvantaged backgrounds. And although it started off as a reasonably small endeavour off the back of the presentation, we've managed to raise £20,000 this year to fund various access points to people on pupil premium. So or kids on free school meals. So it's all I'd say is it just starts with 1 or 2 steps, and then it can snowball from there. Especially if you get the messaging right, it can really resonate with the local community, and people then want to start to get involved sort of automatically, and they're looking you out to see how they can contribute. So we've got that money from sort of 3 sources: from individual donations, business sponsorship, and a grant from a foundation, and you know, a little bit of effort, but it wasn't too much. And then that's allowed us to provide you know, 18 hours of free tennis coaching to schools with an equipment pack. It's allowed us to provide free coaching opportunities twice a week to 10 children. They get free racket, free membership to their clubs. Our tennis clubs sponsored a child through that program. And it's really created a lot of positive media coverage as well. We've been on BBC Radio Kent twice for their, and it's been a really good feel good sort of year from that perspective. So everything Chris has said then and now resonates with us and the clubs that I work with. And yeah, I'd encourage anybody to embrace the message and get involved.
Wow, that's fantastic, Gavin. Well done, and well done, Chris, for singing out that message in the first place. Really, so no, that's brilliant. How did you involve the clubs in it? Obviously, you said, Gavin, that you went out to the schools. Great. How did you ask the clubs to sort of contribute in any way, shape or form on court availability to run more courses, or help financially support certain courses or children?
So the clubs that I work with are generally, well, across the board, are very pro kids, pro the coaching. For example, Herne Bay allowed us to have extra courts to deliver the girls only Prime Video girls only sessions, and we signed up 45 girls to Herne Bay off the back of that program. But what I didn't want to do is go directly to the clubs and ask them for, you know, £500 donation or £400 donation. So what I did was I set up the all the marketing and all the stuff behind the scenes to start to be able to accept donations. And when they saw what was happening, they wanted to get involved. So I didn't have to ask; they just saw it and was like, "How do we support this? What's the best way?" And some gave free memberships, free junior memberships. Others made a cash donation. But yeah, they've been super supportive of everything I've tried to do this year.
Oh, fine. How many clubs are you doing this in, Gavin, now?
5.
Well, no, well done, fantastic. Yeah. Any other questions at all for?
John Ratcliffe's got his hand up. John.
Yeah, thank you, Janice. Kaz, can I just say, sorry, I joined a little bit late due to I sort out a few problems this morning.
It's Chris, John. He hasn't changed his name.
Oh, right, Chris. Sorry about that. That's my problem for arriving late. Fantastic presentation. That I really enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you.
Just to give you a bit of my background, I'm John Ratcliffe, chair of directors at Shooters Hill Lawn Tennis Club, which is an inner city tennis club, a traditional type of club inside the inner London area, which is unusual. 642 members at the moment, Chris. It's nearly out of control, and that's been part of my problem this morning, trying to sort one or two issues out. But yes, I totally agree with everything that you have said. And interesting enough, I went to the club on Saturday morning. It was my turn to do the bacon sandwiches, etc. And it was like being back before COVID. The first time I felt, yes, things are back where they were. There was so many parents, so many children. In fact, the first group from 9 till 10 was the mini Reds, 4 groups going on. But there was a difference, Chris. One group had 7 girls in it and 1 boy. So that's a bit of a change. Girls seem to be flooding into tennis. Maybe it's the Emma factor coming in there. But of course, the story will be to keep hold of those. But at Shooters Hill, we have always tried to develop the player, to give the player the opportunity if they're good enough. We were lucky enough to have Luke House as a coach before he went up to the Bromley Tennis Centre. And in those days, we developed a particular girl. I want to give you this example because this is a problem. And I have no answer to this. I have involvement in football. And if I have a good player, my involvement is with Burnley Football Club, I can send that player to Burnley Football Club and they will look after that player. They'll put them up in accommodation, which has been vetted, etc., etc. So the structure is there for that player to be given an opportunity. Now, we had an example at Shooters Hill where we had a very good player. Luke developed her. We got her into the Bromley Tennis Centre. She played in the county. She played all the levels. And then she was 12th in the country, 12th. And all of a sudden, she's then given an invite to join the National Centre at Roehampton, to join one of their performance squads. What an opportunity. And that's where it all went wrong. Because the parents turned around and says, oh, we can't afford to take them there. It wasn't money, it was time. They couldn't go there. There was a pharmacist, she had to work. Father wasn't really interested in tennis, he was more interested in football at Brighton. So it came to an end. She didn't go. And she never progressed from that point. And there was no structure to allow that individual to go forward. And then 2 years ago, I was at Wimbledon and I was watching one of the junior girls. And this particular player came and sat next to me. She was there because the school had gone there and taken her. And the saddest thing of all, she turned to me and she said, John, this could have been me here. And I thought to myself, yes, it could have been. And that's my problem. I've no answer to this. And unfortunately, our LTA people representing us on the LTA are not on the call today. How on earth do we give the opportunity to take players forward? I was lucky enough to have my youngest son who went into tennis. And when he was 17 and 18 on the junior tour, I put 15,000, the family put £15,000 into him each year. The LTA put £15,000 into him. And now he earns his money in tennis. His contribution to tennis is enormous.
Yeah.
That's where I've no answer to this, but we've got to think about that. What you're doing, Chris, is absolutely fantastic. And you'll get them there. You'll get that child there. But what do we do when we get them there? You know,
well, I think it's $1 million question, isn't it? And I do agree. And I've had, you know, I think initially it's getting, I think if we get more kids to a better level, but could that player not have stayed at Bromley? Was that, you know, did she have to go to the National Tennis Centre?
Yeah, when you get to that level, when you're in the top 12 in the country, you have to develop, you have to move forward. And that costs money. I know it does.
Yeah, no, of course it does. And look, I've got a friend whose PE teacher's a professional player. We sort of disagree a little bit on this, but I think that my point is that again is the dream, isn't it? And look, if we can get a load more players to that level, great. But I think kids have got to be in it for the right reason. Got to be because they enjoy it. But do you think that is probably quite an isolated case, and maybe it's not. But if there was more kids in that situation, maybe more regional areas could pop up. I think there's another talk of trying to create more bubbles and thinking, and maybe with more sponsorship, maybe with and I sort of like to say this, tennis isn't short of money. There's plenty of people out there with deep pockets, and we've seen that who've been so generous and donated to our cause and charity. But I think maybe that's the answer. We get more and more kids to that level, and then something that the structures have to change. But should a Bromley be able to house and cater for a child like that? Maybe they could. I know that's probably a conversation we need to have with Luke. But I was directed to the high performance centre near us at Dukes Meadows, and they wanted, I think it was six to 800 a month for Sabine. And I obviously no chance. And even if she could have the money, even from Stockwell to Dukes Meadows, they don't drive. It'd be impossible. But yeah, I think that's not for me to answer that question, is it? I don't know. No, you're right.
What you're doing is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic to give that opportunity to players there. But what we don't want to do is then come to this logjam at the end of it. I mean, look at football, St. George's. If you've got a good player, you send them there, they stay there. They're on site there. So you have a week's course, they're on site there. We don't have that in tennis. And as what I can see with the executive, the LTA, they're not thinking in those lines at all, unfortunately. It's more a business model about how can we continue to develop in a business framework. Well, these young kids from our backgrounds that we're talking about here, because I'm just like you, and in the city area, we see the lot. We see those who've got it and those who've got it. And we try our very best to give them the opportunity. And I think we do. Over the period of time, we've done that. And it's fantastic to see all these children enjoying themselves. but occasionally you get somebody who comes out who think, oh, that's a bit better than that.
Is she still playing now, John?
Sorry?
Is she still playing now?
She is still playing, and I tell you what, the good thing about it, she hasn't given it up, and she's now joined our coaching team. How about that? So out of that has come something positive, but yeah, to me, that was she could have gone on, and I just think, well, I mean, I even thought to myself, do I take her over there? And my wife said, no, John, you can't get involved in the thing. But hard.
No, I couldn't agree. And to be fair, we're at a bit of a, not a crossroads with Sabine. Sabine's not even 11 yet. But you look at what does come next. We're in a park. We don't have lots of other kids in the local area that could come and practice with her. Unless she got a scholarship at Putney High or somewhere, one of those schools at a tennis school. It's hard to see where this opportunity is going to come. It really is. But we'll do what we can. She does a private lesson with my best friend now. An amazing coach. I do a couple. She competes, and she competes well. Like she's one of those players who's better in a tournament than she is in a lesson sometimes. So I think I just want to try and keep that door open. And look, if she could get a scholarship to the US or something like that, or become a coach, what an amazing story. The doors that will open up for her. Fantastic.
Absolutely. And that coaching, you're dead right. We have to develop our coaches with inside. Not all of them, but a good majority of our coaches are internally developed. Luke House came out of Shooters Hill, and to me, one of the best coaches at grassroots level in the country.
Yeah, brilliant.
So that's the way to go forward. That's the way to do it. Working with the universities, working with your clubs to develop. And we lose them. We lose the coaches. They go off. They're going off into the parks. And the people turn to me and say, what are you doing here, John? I said, well, I have to fight that sometimes inside, but they're helping tennis in general. Yeah, sometimes it gets a little bit disillusioned when you think, oh, God, there goes another one. But yeah, we bring the next one through, etc., etc.
Well done. Cheers, John. Thanks for the question there. Anybody else got any questions for Chris at all?
Andy, can I just say something there? When John, I'm sorry, hang on, wait a minute. I'm the other half to John, and I actually dealt with my son when he was going through tennis, and I go to good luck. It's hard work. I've travelled the country. I did our holidays on it, everything else, and they were fantastic. There was a system in the LTA that he did with coaching, with I can't remember what it's called. What was it called?
ACE program, Caroline.
ACE program. So he actually did the program that the LTA had, and they supported him money wise, and he went through, which is why he did his coaching and what have you. And then he went into college, and he did that there, went to university. But they took that ACE system away, which supported you, not massively, but it was a little bit. And I just think they've taken away everything from children that are coming through. Okay, they may not be the best players, but they go into, whether they go into competitions to be a referee, or they go into coaching, or they go into tennis in some form or other. I think we have to think more about children going into tennis, and that isn't just as a player, because at the moment everything is about getting them to be the best player. But we cope within tennis with lots of other things. So you might have a child who loves tennis, but they're not the best player, but they could be a fantastic referee or even a coach. So the ACE scheme was there, and that's gone. And as John said, they've taken everything away, and they're leaving it to coach the clubs. And I mean, I remember being at Wimbledon and saying to the board of the LTA in 2017, it's great what you're doing, but what about the coaches? And here we are 7 years later with a great shortage of coaches, because they took the funding away. They did that on purpose. And my concern is they're not interested at the bottom and about how we develop. And I child does brilliantly and gets to the top, but there's a very small minority, but they can still stay in tennis and enjoy it.
Yeah, Chris was saying that. Yeah.
Our son, who's now gets his job, he still enjoys the game, which is more important to me than anything else. That is doing something he loves. So, I just think that we and I hopefully the LTA in the future will think about tennis as a whole and not just the best player. That's it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think on one hand I sort of think it's difficult. I think I can't speak, but I'm having conversations with somebody there, and I think this is maybe a goal to try and do something to support. But I think it will always probably be the better players. But this is why we've got I've got a group of a couple of probably just a handful of teenagers who they've done a group lesson a week. They really love it. They've carried on going into their teens. They'll pass it. Obviously, you don't need to really pass. It's not pass or fail for the level 1, but to pass a level 2, they're going to need upskilling. They're going to need things, and I think this is where the investment needs to come. This is what I'm doing. I've got one boy who has a private lesson every week. Parents pay for it, and I said, look, could his friend in the thing? They live. It's interesting. They live on a one sort of huge Victorian townhouse, and across the road, this other boy lives in a council block, and they're really good friends. And I said to the mum, look, would you mind if this other boy joined in? He could really do with getting his technique. The session I always think works better with 2. And she said, yeah, no problem at all. And now he can upskill. I think, with a few private lessons, it won't take a lot of real work on his technique. He will get to a level 2. And I think that's what I kind of hope. And you said that I hope I haven't put too much emphasis on the Sabine story, but I think like we sort of said earlier, it's about creating these opportunities and keeping these kids in the sport and whatever their level might be. But it's getting them to that level 2, and the level 2 has now become quite a bit harder, which I understand the argument for that. We want to keep standards up. But how we're going to get these kids from these sort of tennis leaders courses and level 1s to do a level 2, that is the challenge. And that's what I'm really hoping, because you're right, we've got a huge shortage of coaches. So, yeah, I think we need to try and find ways. And, but I do think clubs, I think if we wait for the LTA to do it, we could be waiting a long time. They can't fund everybody, so could you have could you set up an event at your club and say, look, invite people to come along and say, this is what we want to do. We want to facilitate a pathway. There is funding and grants out there for ethnic minority coaches, female coaches. So I think there is money available.
There is. You've got it from Kent before and Virtus and whatever. So the upshot of it is, Kent Tennis has got its own funding stream to make sure disadvantaged children have got that coaching pathway if they require it as well. So
Chris is absolutely right, Andy. It has to come. Coaches have to come from the clubs, and the committees and the board of directors of these clubs have to support that. That's because it is the coach which makes the club. And we have to invest in that. Absolutely correct, Chris.
Yeah. Any more questions for Chris at all? Juliet.
Hi, that was a really good presentation, Chris.
Thank you.
I'm very interested, but I find it all a bit daunting.
Okay.
What club are you from, Juliet?
Knockholt. I'm also with Bidborough as well. And I've also got sort of connections to Tunbridge Wells Sports Centre. So I'm a recently qualified level 2 coach in August. I would see myself more assisting somebody with one of these programs than sort of running it. Do you have any record of anybody with that are doing the initiatives sort of around the Tunbridge Wells area, or they're starting these things out that I could help rather than shall we say lead?
No,
I've got enough experience.
Gavid, is that close to you? I think Gavid's probably a lot maybe in the Kent area, but I think I see what you're saying. It can start really, really small, and it might be. I don't know if you have any involvement with a local school. Do you have any links with the local school? But I think one thing as coaches, I think we all struggle to do is get that link with the school. I think it's a difficult nut to crack, and I think we'd handed flyers out and didn't really get very far. But as soon as we went to that local school and said, "Oh, we've got this free initiative. We were offering free holiday course places with the money we'd raised," all of a sudden they were like, "Free tennis?" And you were like, "Yeah." And all of a sudden it became much easier. But it might just be that I think one of the things we've found is find a parent that might be a governor at the school, or might be sort of quite vocal or quite influential at the school, and just say, "Look, we've got a couple of free places, or even one free place. Do you know any kids that might be interested?" And I think it can start as small as that.
Start off small.
Start off really small. That's we started really, really small, and it has developed into something huge. But over time, and it was never the intent. If you'd have said to me 4 years ago that we'd have a charity and all this, I wouldn't have believed it. But it started very, very small. It actually started with a lady put her head through the fence and said, what's going on here? And I was like, I'm really upset that you can't tell this is a coaching session. But she's like, I love tennis. I think it's brilliant. And she said, I never had the money to support my kids and give them a chance to play. And she was the lady who ran the Cheer Trust, the charity we work with. And we started, they had the funding to run the session initially. We pay for it now. And it started, the kids came along, and we've got the boy doing his level 1 next week, as I said, and Sabine. And a lot of the kids, we've got one boy who really struggles at school. He's been brought out of school. He goes to sort of not a specialist school that, he's only concentrating on a small amount of GCSEs. And at school, I hear he's a bad apple. But tennis, he comes, he gets on with it, he loves it. And he's like, this is tennis. And I think a bit like the Freddie Flint, cricket, football, you sort of think, or boxing or something, but this is tennis, he comes and he loves it. And you're like, how, but it's just taken time. We've had to build that trust. But yeah, I think just start small. And
Okay, yeah, no, it's good
please feel free
advice.
to get in touch and I'd happily give any advice.
Okay,
David, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with one step, and quickly you just build momentum, and you see the impact of what you're trying to do, and it becomes quite addictive in many ways. But one of the areas that can be quite challenging is having the resources to go into schools, and especially if you're providing sort of free coaching sessions for schools as a sort to act as a sort of feeder for your program. The cost to cover the coaching rates can be quite difficult, especially if you're smaller. But we started an apprenticeship program 3 years ago, and we're just putting our third apprentice through that, and the business through the program funds their level 1, 2, and 3. But what I've started to do is build resourcing into my bids for grant funding, and I link that to a legacy perspective to say that if we want this to continue long term after the funding's finished, we need the resources in place to be able to deliver that. And it's not mega money, but it contributes to certainly the level 1 and level 2 costs, which aren't, they're not small costs now, especially if you invest in somebody and they leave a year later, that can be a bit of a killer. But normally we invest in the kids and the young adults that we know, and they've stayed local. But yeah, so it's just finding ways to think outside the box a little bit so that you can get the funding, the resources to get in there. And we can, because apprentices have to work a minimum of 30 hours a week, they're either working with me on the sort of admin side of stuff, or I can get them in schools where, okay, they're not necessarily generating revenue directly, but we're increasing our footprint within the community and targeting kids that may want to access our Rally for Change grant and stuff like that. So it all starts to link together quite nicely.
Just very quickly, you can use there's a schools voucher through the LTA as well, so you can go to your school and if the teacher needs to sign up for a training course, but the school will then receive £250 for either equipment or coaching. So again, it's a nice way of breaking that barrier and saying, we can offer something to get you started.
Juliet, we've got 5 inclusion mentors in the county. 2 of them are actually with us today, which I'll introduce in a little while. But yeah, if you're interested, I can get one of the inclusion mentors to give you a call and then just talk you through about a few options, if that's okay.
Yes, yeah, no, it'd be good.
Yeah. Excellent. Any more questions for Chris, because he's done a fantastic job in his presentation today.
Thank you.
That's it. No, Chris, honestly, thank you. Thanks very much for talking to us today. I'll hand back over to Janice, if I may.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, just last few moments to cover the last few bits. So basically, venue registration, the window is open and closes at the end of 20th of December. I know a few of you on the call today have already registered, but I also know a few of you haven't. So if you've got any problems, need any support with your venue registration, then do reach out to me. Would be great if you could get it done within the next 2 weeks, so that I don't have to chase many clubs once we get into December. So yeah, so well done. Thank you to the who have completed it. So that's all on venue registration. I'm going to pass back to Andy, who's going to give us an update on the LTA awards and EDI mentors.
Yeah, so the awards have definitely a different look this year. It's going to be at the Avenue Tennis Club on the 15th of February. It's going to be starting around about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, split into 2 parts. So we have a youth section and an adult type section. It will be a festival of tennis, as well as presenting the awards. We'll have wheelchair tennis, visual impairment, pickleball. We'll have stands from Trevor May, sustainability, carbon footprint companies as well. So it's a different look. It's a network event for as many clubs to attend as possible. From a Wolves perspective, the nominations shut in 10, 11 days time. So, you know, you as clubs are doing fantastic work. I'm sure your coaches are as well. You must have volunteers at your club, the initiatives that you're running. So we want as many nominations and good nominations coming into Kent Tennis as possible. So please look at the awards, Google the LTA awards. Very easy to nominate this year, 300 words, not as complicated as it has been in the past, but just get your awards in. As I said, it's going to be free to attend. You know, we're going to be supplying food to you on the day, and you don't really want to miss it. So please get your nominations in. From a mentor's point of view, Kent Tennis are now working with 5 inclusion mentors. Karen Hodgson and Vanessa are on the calls today. Already we've got calls from so many clubs. We're passing their details on to clubs. We want clubs, venues, coaches to engage with our mentors. They can talk to you about being more inclusive at your club, and exactly what Chris has been talking to and about today. It's working with your wider community. You know, we need to engage with these people. You know, if you're just a members club that are just waiting for members to turn up at your gate on an open day, then, you know, we need to be looking further outside our 4 walls on clubs. So please engage with us and our mentors. And if you do want to get in contact with them, you can do that through me or Janice, if that's okay. Karen's introduced herself before, but I'm going to put Vanessa on the spot now. And Vanessa, if you can just introduce yourself as a mentor, because you couldn't do it last month.
No, absolutely. I'd just like to say to Chris and what Gavin said as well, just to reiterate that it is baby steps. Things always start small, and I think that's the key message, but really inspiring stuff. So my background is as a school governor in special needs schools and trustee of disabled children's charities. And I'm not a coach. I'm a mum of 2 disabled boys, and they became my passion and inspiration for getting into, basically just making tennis accessible to everybody. So Whitstable Tennis Club, where I'm based, we started our disability programme in 2018. We started with learning disability. We now do, we've expanded quite significantly. We now do wheelchair, sensory tennis for people with more severe and complex disabilities. We do walking and dementia-friendly tennis. And the dementia-friendly tennis is part of our outreach programme. So our kind of motto is, if you can't come to us, then we'll come to you, sort of thing. And that works really well. So we've just developed the programmes over the year. As I say, I'm not a coach, so I'm kind of winging it. If you're interested in any of the above, then please, have a chat, get in touch. We will be getting in touch with yourselves regardless, and hopefully, can encourage you to maybe come and visit us, see what we do, or I can come out to you. Tennis is so inclusive. Every piece of equipment can be adapted. If you have limited use in your hands, you don't have to be able to physically grip a racket. So it's an incredibly inclusive sport. And what I would say is that it's incredibly joyful. People think it's a bit of a headache getting involved with disability tennis, but actually it's, I promise you, it's such a joyful, wonderful thing to be part of.
Great, thanks, Vanessa. And I said, with what the funding of Kent Tennis has got at the moment, we've got £200 per club to start up walking tennis. There's going to be a walking tennis forum on the 25th of this month at 7 o'clock. So as a club, if you are interested in in starting your own walking tennis group, then join us on the 25th at 7 o'clock. Care for tennis. We're looking at moving tennis into care homes, and there's grants available for that. So again, if you know a parent or a loved one that's in a care home at the moment, you've got that link, then there's funding to put into starting a project in a care home. We've got pupil premium funding at the moment. So if you are looking into a school or looking to your coach to try and get into a school, then we're prepared to match fund the pupil premium there to start a project either at the school or at your club. And this is on top of any serves or open court disability projects that you've got. So if you are thinking of starting an initiative, talk to our inclusion mentors, and there's funding readily available to start your programs today. So back over to you, Janice.
Yeah, well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We've run out of time to go on good news stories, but I think we've covered most of what we need to cover. So just to thank everyone for joining us today. We've had a couple of new people join us on our Zoom, so that's been brilliant. So welcome to Julia, and I think Alex might be new first time. So it's lovely to see new people join us, and do join us when we meet again. So our next meeting is going to be a special sort of meeting, because we're going to announce our shortlist for the LTA Awards. So we won't be having what we call our coffee morning clubs type based with speaker. We'll be having a coffee morning where we announce our awards. It'll give you a chance to raise anything you want to raise with us, and just really a little celebration and a chat. So our next meeting is going to be on Monday the 23rd of December. So we will be publicising the day in our Kent Tennis News, and obviously you'll all get an invite to that next meeting. So it'd be lovely to welcome you all back again in December. So I think that's all from me. So we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much, Chris. Thanks once again. Stay on the line a second, Chris.